Hi, and welcome back to English Lessons with Stephanie. This is writing and vocabulary lesson number 3. This is the list of the vocabulary words we're going to be discussing today. These all come from our reading and listening for this week, which was about civil disobedience. So our first word is protest. And as you can see here, protest can be used in a couple different ways. Protest can be used as a noun, a count or a non-count noun. And protester is a countable noun, which means a person who is protesting. Protest as a verb can be used transitively or intransitively, which we talked about in this week's grammar lesson. So remember that transitive verbs are followed by objects, and intransitive verbs don't need objects. In this week's reading, we had this sentence. We protest so that our leaders can see and hear what is important to us. So if we look at this use of the word protest, what kind of word is protest? Is it a noun or a verb here? Well, it's a verb because we is the subject, so protest is our verb. And can you tell if protest here is intransitive or transitive? After protest here, we do not have an object. We have so, which is a conjunction. So this first use of the word protest is intransitive. In the next sentence, we protested police brutality. This is also a verb, but now it's transitive because it's followed by police brutality, which is an object. The third sentence here, the protest drew thousands of people, is a countable noun. And finally, we have protesters, which are people, of course. Protesters demanded an end to police brutality. Our next word is unsatisfied. And unsatisfied has the prefix un in front of it, which means not. So if you know that satisfied means to be happy or content with something, unsatisfied means you're not happy with something. This week's reading said we protest to show that we are unsatisfied with what is happening. That means we're not happy with what is going on. We can also say that small meal left me unsatisfied. From the chart, you can see that we have a full word family. So the noun form is satisfaction. We have the prefix un in front of some of the word forms to make it the opposite. So our noun form, satisfaction, that's noun countable because it's a feeling. Then we have satisfy, which is a transitive verb. So we need to have an object after it. We have two adjective forms, unsatisfying or satisfying, which is our feeling. Unsatisfying is the cause of something, the cause of the feeling of satisfaction. And satisfied or unsatisfied is our feeling. And then we have an adverb form. The word movement we discussed as having two different meanings. In this reading, however, movement means collective action. So action by a group of people working together. So this week we've been talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. And movement in this sense is a countable noun. This is a single movement. And you can say like there will be another movement or there have been many movements. So for our second example, we talk about the women's rights movement. That is another movement since it's countable. Okay, so this word reform has two different forms that look alike. We've got the noun and the verb, and they're both spelled and pronounced reform. And the noun form, it's countable, and the verb form is transitive. So reform means change or improvement. You can look at the word and you see the form, right? Re means again, and form is the shape of something. So to reform something means to shape it again, to kind of change it. In the reading, we use the word reform as a noun. The Black Lives Matter movement ushered in a number of reforms. So that means it caused a number of changes. Our next word is awareness. And awareness is a feeling. It's usually a non-count noun. Sorry, I forgot to put that on the slide. And awareness, you probably know from the adjective aware. So aware means to know something, to recognize that something exists. So in the reading, we had this sentence. The movement ushered in a heightened awareness of the deadly impact of racism. So awareness here would mean people can suddenly know, not suddenly, well, people begin to know, to realize that racism can be deadly. In our second example, Maybe she didn't come to visit you because she wasn't aware that you were ill. It's like maybe she didn't know you were sick, so she didn't come to visit you. Our next word is impact. And just like the word reform, there's a noun and verb form of impact that look and sound alike. Sometimes the verb form is pronounced a little differently with the accent, the stress on the second syllable. So people will say, this impacts me. You can say this impacted me as well. So you can say it both ways. But the noun form, impact, the stress is on the first syllable always. So impact is the effect or result or consequence of something. We talk about the deadly impact of racism. And as a noun, a countable noun, we can say something like, we won't know the true impacts of the pandemic for many months. And in adjective form, you can say impactful or impacted. So impactful would be the cause of something, and impacted would be the result. Racism is our next word. This describes a feeling or an attitude that some races are worse or better than others. So racism is because it's a feeling or an attitude, it's a non-count noun, and a racist is a person, so that's countable. A racist is a person with that feeling. And racist can also be used as an adjective. So you can use this sentence as an example. He was fired after telling a racist joke. So we use it as an adjective there. Or, he was racist. Or he was a racist. That means the person. Moral. So ethical, inherently good or right. Ethical, meaning to do with ethics, right? What is right or wrong. So in the reading, we use moral like an adjective. When we were talking about the nephew, and we said that she was less impressed with his sense of moral and civic duty. And if you look at the chart, we've got a full word family here. So moral can be used as a countable noun. Morality is the idea of right and wrong. To moralize, an intransitive verb, is to try and teach lessons from something. Then in the adjective form, we have moral, which is to be good, and immoral is to be not good, and amoral means to not have morals at all. Then we have the adverb form, and in the other column, I wrote an expression, the moral of the story, which is a commonly used expression to mean the lesson that we should learn here. So, a lot of events in our lives teach us what's right and what's wrong. So in the last sentence, the example is, the moral of the story is that bad people will always get caught. So maybe we learned this from some life experience. Our next word is duty. And duty in the reading was a noun, and it was used as a countable noun, moral and civic duty. So duty means a responsibility or an obligation, something that you must or should do. And a duty is really more of things that you feel like you should do. So, for example, voting. People should vote because it's important to participate in society. But nothing is going to happen to you. You will have no bad consequences if you fail to vote. Or like parents. Parents should tell their children about life. Parents should teach their children. It's their duty, right? But if parents lie to their children or don't teach them good lessons, they don't go to jail, right? And nobody really punishes them. Our next word is concerned. Concern is basically the same as worry. So just like worry can be used as a noun or a verb. I have many worries, or I am worried, or this worries me. And the same is true with concern. So concern can be used like, I have many concerns, or you can use it as a verb, this concerns me, or as an adjective, I am concerned, or I am unconcerned, or this is concerning, like worrisome. It's basically a synonym. It has the same meaning. Our next word is support. Support is yet another word that has an identical noun and verb form. These noun and verb forms are the same. There's another noun form, supporter, which is a person who supports something. And the adjective form is supportive. This is a word that we use commonly to describe someone who is very helpful and good to you in your life. So support means to promote, to uphold, to back something. basically to really help something strongly. So in the reading, we read, I certainly lied to my parents all the time when I wanted to do something I knew they wouldn't approve of, and usually it wasn't for something as noble as going to support a critical social movement. So we support movements, another of our vocabulary words. That means we're helping this collective action. So if we support the Black Lives Matter movement, that means we like this movement. We think it's good. We think it's important. So we try to participate and help it. The last example, my parents support my decision to move to France. That means I want to go to France, and my parents say, yeah, you should. We think you should do that too, and we will help you to do that. Out of control. This is an idiom that means you can't control something, right? So something is out of control. It's used as an adjective phrase. And another expression that has similar meaning is out of hand. So this uses the word control. And in the reading it said, many protests are peaceful, but as we've seen this week, they can quickly get out of control. And we use this to describe typically a lot of situations involving many people. Like this last sentence, when the football team lost, the crowd got out of control. But we can also use it to describe other things like work is really crazy right now and my schedule is out of control. Like it feels like you cannot control things. So we talk about our lives feeling out of control, like you have too many things to do. Punishment is our next word. Punishment is a noun. We can see from this suffix ment that it's a noun, and here it can be noun count or countable. The verb form is punish, and there's an adjective form, punitive, which is describing something that is designed to punish you. So for example, if you go to court and they tell you you will have to pay a punitive fine, that means they're using money to punish you. You can hear that punitive is pronounced differently than punishment or punish. You make the U sound. For example, in the reading we read, we wanted to know what his punishment had been for lying to his parents. We can also say a child's punishment for doing something bad is to stand in a corner for a few minutes. That's very common here. Or as a verb, the teacher punished the students for cheating. Our next word is ineffective. This word has the prefix in front of it, which makes it not or negative. So effective means it produces a result. It's working. And ineffective means it's not working. It's producing no result. So we said that grounding, you might remember that grounding means making someone stay at home. Grounding is an ineffective punishment during the pandemic, right? Because if everyone is staying at home, then grounding someone, making them stay at home is not a really good punishment because they're already staying at home. Or we could say eating only ice cream is an ineffective way to lose weight, even if we wish it were not true. Potentially is an adverb. We can tell because of the ly at the end. And potentially means possibly. So we said protest can be potentially dangerous. So you might remember from our first grammar lesson that adverbs can describe verbs or adjectives. So in our first example, protest can be potentially dangerous. We see that potentially is describing the word dangerous, which is an adjective. So we're not saying that the protests are dangerous. We're saying they can be possibly dangerous, maybe dangerous. In a noun form, you can say this house is old, but it has potential. It has a lot of potential. And that means it has possibilities. Your new neighbors could be potential friends. So potential friends, possible friends, maybe friends. So here we have potential used as an adjective to describe friends, which is a noun. Consequence. So we talked a little bit about consequences already, but this is a noun, a countable noun, that means something that happens as a result of something that already happened, like a punishment. A punishment is a consequence for something that you did that was bad. In the story we read, it's equally important to understand that all actions, even good ones, have consequences. So even when you do something good, something happens. So like if I help someone, they might smile at me or they might thank me. and that is a consequence of me helping them, which is good. Or if you do something bad, like in the last sentence, if you choose to break the law, you will face the consequences. So what are some consequences that will happen if you break the law? Well, you could go to jail, you could pay a fine, you could be arrested, other things could happen. We can see that as an adjective form, consequential, we can also say something is inconsequential. That means the opposite. It doesn't matter. Nothing will happen as a result. So, for example, what's something that's inconsequential? Maybe what you have for breakfast. If you're trying to decide, should I have oatmeal or should I have yogurt? It's not a really important decision. It's not really going to change your day very much. So we went through today's vocabulary pretty quickly, but we've already talked about these words, so I just wanted to give you some more examples of how to use them correctly. So today, when you sit down and try to write to use these new words, remember, try to use different word forms. Maybe use one noun form, maybe use a verb form, or the negative form using in or un in front of the adjectives. You can also try to summarize this week's reading in 1 or 2 sentences. Tell us what was the moral of the story. If you want to write something a little longer, this would be a good week to write about protest. You can answer the question, have you ever protested? And if so, what did you protest and why? Or if you have not ever protested, can you think of why you would ever protest or talk about why you don't want to protest? Protest is different from country to country. So it would be interesting for you to write about also how protest is different in the US and in other countries around the world. So when you're done writing, it would be great if you could send this to a partner, have them look at your work, someone who you know who speaks English, or send it to me and maybe I can take a look at it. So thanks for joining us today. So continue with this week's speaking lesson where you'll have a chance to practice even more with this vocabulary and some of the ideas we've talked about.